I have always said that the first engineer is God himself, because in Genesis 1:3, God commanded that let there be light, and there was light. And so when it comes to the power sector, the key issue is how do you keep on lights in a sustainable manner, in an affordable manner, and taking the overall totality of the country's developmental agenda into consideration. You would recall that when we assumed office in 2009, the installed capacity was just about 1,800. We had just come out of doom so because in 2007, we had about a year long of load shedding. And so we needed to ramp up generation in order to ensure that we meet the demand. Through dint of hard work, the NDC, by the time we were leaving office, had increased generation capacity to 4,292. And we're not just talking of installed capacity, we're also talking of available or dependable capacity of about 2,488 with a reserve margin of 443. In this industry, you normally need about 20 to 30% of reserve margin. And when you do the computation, I want to put on record that we do not have that so-called excess capacity that cost us about $500 million. And I'll show you a slide with ECG where they give you the actual figures and the outcomes of 2019. By the time we're handing over, we had comprehensively, and let me re-emphasize this, comprehensively resolved the load shedding challenge. For 1 year, between January to January, that's 2016, and 2017, we did not declare load shedding. And so if anybody tells you that he assumed office and declared load shedding, it can only be a fallacy of hasty generalization. We constructed a lot of power plants, Ameri being one, Car Power being one, Gontema plant, Sonona Sogli, and so many other power plants. We equally invested in the solar, wind, renewables, and those other ones. What we would do on assumption of office is to ensure that we put the hydro plants together. We want to restructure the whole power sector so that Buidam and Akosomo being hydro, they would concentrate on the hydro. Then you have what you call a Ghana thermal plant. Then you bring the thermal plants together. Then you can float it through a transparent process for Ghanaians to own that stake. Ghanaians ought to be considered first. And I want to put on record that President Mahama would put Ghanaians and their interests first in a transparent manner. And so that is what we would seek to do. We would also seek to ensure that we increase generation capacity to meet demand. We cannot afford to go back to load shedding. And so we would also work on the transmission sector. When we were in office, we did a lot of upgrading. We moved a lot of the lines from 161 to 330. We even got Gridco on their own balance sheet to contract a facility from Agence France de Développement so that we can export power by the end of 2017. And based on available records in Parliament, Gridco would have generated $24 million per annum from that project alone. And we could export about 200 megawatts of power. That project has stalled because Gridco's financing is in tatters. And for 4 years, we have not been able as a country to conclude that project. When President Mahama assumes office, 7th January, he will put into action immediate steps to ensure that we complete that project. Because that would then mean that we'll be exporting more power, generate more foreign revenue, and then improve the economy. When we look at the distribution sector, when the NDC assumed office, our national coverage was just 54%. In fact, in the 3 northern regions, it was just about 24%. Under President Mahama, we pursued an aggressive policy to increase access. And by the time we were leaving office, we had increased access to about 84%. That is quite remarkable. Today, as I speak under President Akufo-Addo, they have increased access over the past 4 years by just 2 percentage points. And so we were on course to achieve universal access to energy by 2020. This government has reviewed it and taken it to 2030. Let me assure all of you, those who normally write in their homes and their villages that no light, no vote, on assumption of office, President Mahama will review the 2020 target to 2025 We have done it before. We have achieved that stake before. And so when we say we will do it, we mean we will do it. And let me bet you, by 2025, Ghana would achieve universal access to electricity. We pursued a lot of programs to restructure the energy sector. And so under our economic recovery program led by Honorable Boa, Honorable Dr. Donko, and more importantly, Honorable Setekwe, by the end of 2016, ECG posted a profit of more than $500 million cedis. In 2017, 2018, 2019, ECG has posted a cumulative loss of almost 10 billion cedis. So from a profit-making entity, today that sector is a loss-making entity, and the debts keep compounding. Not only did we achieve that profit, we also instituted the Energy Sector Levies Act. That act has 5 components: the Energy Debt Recovery Levy, the Price Stabilization, the Power Infrastructure, the Public Lighting, and more importantly, the component of it that ensures that we cushion fishermen. And that's what Honorable Board talked about. So we do a cross-subsidy where we lessen the price of premise fuel for fishermen so that they can get fish stock. When we were leaving office, Honorable Tekwe left an amount of about 250 million sitting in the account. He made a payment of about 800 million cedis. Today, this is the report for 2019. Minister Kenoforiata, the current minister, has accrued almost 4 billion for only 2019. This is the levy the MPP described as obnoxious. This is the levy they promised to scrap. But for this levy, the sector would have been in tatters. And so that tells you that there are people who have a far sight. There are people who think ahead and not just about elections. Today, this levy is what we would depend on when we come into office. One, to engage indigenous Ghanaian companies for rural electrification. Because that component alone can give us about 1 billion within the four-year period. And then the public lighting levy, we would ensure that we use indigenous Ghanaian companies, help them to set up, recruit Ghanaians, and then we can roll out a massive program by putting more street lights for security and also for tourism. When you fly down, sometimes the city is dark. And so if we can leverage this money, we are confident that we would achieve a lot through these processes. We would also ensure transparency in your billing. And let me also put on record that Ghana, from 2017, 2016, 2015, has not been the country with the highest tariff. And I would show you that record. There is a publication from the African Development Bank. Ghana is about the 4th cheapest when it comes to end-user tariff. It's about the 4th cheapest when it comes to bulk generation tariff. And so when the minister appeared in Parliament and stated that Ghana had the highest rate, I asked him, where was his source? He told me his source was Google. I was clear and I told him that, Minister, your source cannot be Google. You must depend on authenticated sources. And as I speak to you, this is an authenticated source from no less a body than the African Development Bank. And so we would ensure that we put this sector back on track and ensure that we provide you with reliable source of power, affordable source of power, but more importantly, in a sustainable manner. We dealt with the issue of fuel, especially with the Atuabo gas processing plant. It was a 1 billion project, but today, because of the Atuabo gas processing plant, because of import substitution, the country is saved about $350 million per annum every year. About 50% of our domestic LPG requirements is served domestically from the Atuabo gas processing plant. That is where you see visionary leaders. That is where you see leaders who think into the future. Leaders who borrow money through smart borrowing and invest it in critical infrastructure that will spur economic growth and development. And not those who will borrow money and just invest them in recurrent expenditure, balloon your debt, create a serious debt to GDP problem. And then today, as I speak, when we collect our taxes, we spend about 90.6% of those revenues for debt servicing alone. This country is broke. We need to rescue this country. We need to save this country. It is a collective responsibility on all of us to ensure that on the 7th of December, when you go to cast your vote, think of Ghana first. Think of two leaders, one who has a vision, one who thinks into the future, and one who resorts to populist rhetoric but cannot show anything for the money that has been collected. In the oil sector alone, President Akufo-Addo has collected about 4 times what President Mahama got in terms of revenue. So the question is that what is there to show? At least we can boast of hospitals, we can boast of airports, we can boast of monumental, significant achievements that will outlive President Mahama and his generation. That is a leader you can trust. That is a leader you can hand back this country to. And I want to assure you, ladies and gentlemen, those watching this program, that if you have any doubt in terms of who to vote for, I'm convinced that President Mahama is the right person that you vote for. Thank you very much.